The battlefield encounter. The planet was burning. Smoke rose high into the black sky, hiding the stars. Explosions echoed across the ruined land, each blast shaking the ground beneath his boots. The human soldier moved carefully, his rifle held tight in his hands, his breath heavy inside the helmet. He was tired, his body bruised, but his mind was still sharp. War had taught him never to lower his guard. Through the dust and fire, he saw the broken walls of an alien outpost. Shattered machines lay scattered like skeletons of giants. The silence between explosions was worse than the noise. It felt like the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next strike. The soldier pushed forward, searching for survivors. His orders were simple: clear the battlefield, report back. But deep in his heart, he was searching for something more than victory. He was searching for meaning in the endless chaos. Then he heard it, a soft cry, weak and painful, unlike anything he had heard before. It was not human, yet it carried the same tone of suffering. He followed the sound, moving past the smoke and rubble. And there, lying against a broken wall, was an alien girl. Her skin glowed faintly under the pale light of the burning sky. Her body was covered in wounds, her breathing shallow. She looked young, maybe close to his own age. Her silver eyes were half closed, yet when she saw him, fear flickered in them. Her lips moved, whispering words in her own tongue, words he could not understand. But the meaning was clear. She thought he had come to end her life. He knelt down, lowering his weapon. "It's okay," he said softly, though he knew she could not understand. His voice carried something stronger than language. "Mercy." The alien girl tried to move, but pain forced her back. Her wound was deep, poisoned by the weapons of war. Even her advanced alien biology could not heal it. The soldier checked his pack, but his medical kit was useless for her kind. Her blood was a strange color, darker than his, thicker. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the way her hand weakly reached for him. And then he made a choice no one else would, a choice that would change both their lives forever. He pulled out a small blade, cutting across his own arm. Red human blood flowed freely. The alien girl's eyes widened as he pressed his wound against hers. At first, nothing happened, only pain. Then, like fire spreading through dry wood, her body reacted. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes grew sharper. The wound began to close, slowly but surely. The girl looked at him, confusion and wonder mixing in her gaze. Her voice trembled as she whispered something again. Though he did not know her words, he understood her tone. It was gratitude, disbelief, and hope all at once. He felt his strength fading as his blood continued to flow. Yet he did not pull away. He had seen too much death in this war. And for once, he wanted to save life instead of destroying it. Finally, when her body seemed stronger, when the color returned to her face, he pulled back. He pressed a cloth to his own wound, his vision blurring. But even through the pain, he saw her sitting up. The alien girl was alive. Because of him, she looked at him with those glowing silver eyes. For the first time, there was no fear in them, only connection. Two souls from different worlds, bound by one act of blood. The soldier leaned back against the rubble, breathing hard. He knew his commanders would never understand. They would call him a traitor for saving the enemy. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was that she lived. The alien girl touched her chest, then reached out to touch his hand. Her skin was warm, her touch gentle. Though no words were spoken, he knew she was making a promise, a silent vow that this moment would not be forgotten. The battlefield roared again, more explosions in the distance. But for the soldier and the alien, time had stopped. Their fates had been tied together, sealed with blood. Neither of them knew what the future would bring, but both felt it deep inside. This was only the beginning, the farewell. The morning after the battle was strangely quiet. The smoke still lingered in the sky, but the guns had fallen silent. The soldier stood at the edge of the ruined valley, his arms still wrapped in cloth, his strength weak, but his mind restless. Beside him, The alien girl moved slowly, her wounds mostly healed by the strange bond of their blood. She looked stronger now, but her silver eyes carried something heavy, something he could not name. They did not speak the same language, yet silence between them felt alive. Every glance, every gesture carried meaning. She touched her chest often, then looked at him, as if reminding herself he was the reason she still breathed. He felt the same weight, though he would never say it aloud. It was not just survival. It was connection, a bond no soldier's handbook could explain. But war never sleeps for long. From the distant hills came the deep rumble of engines, alien carriers sweeping across the horizon. The soldier knew what it meant. Her people were returning, and with them, danger for him. If they saw a human soldier standing over their fallen daughter, they would not ask questions, they would kill. The alien girl saw the fear in his face. She shook her head, and for the first time, she spoke a word he understood. "Go," she whispered, her voice broken but clear. The soldier froze, surprised that she had found even a fragment of his language. She pushed weakly against his chest, urging him to move. Her eyes begged him to leave before it was too late. But he did not want to leave. For reasons he could not explain, he wanted to stay by her side, to protect her even from her own people. Yet deep inside, he knew she was right. This was not his place, not his world. If he stayed, both of them would die. The engines grew louder, shadows of alien ships cutting across the burning sky. The alien girl stumbled to her feet, still weak but determined. She pointed toward the forest behind him, her hand trembling. "Go," she repeated, this time louder, her voice carrying the strength of command. Tears shimmered in her silver eyes, but her face stayed firm. The soldier hesitated, his heart heavy. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt useless. So instead, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small metal tag, his soldier's identification. He pressed it into her hand, closing her fingers around it. "Remember," he whispered. She looked at the tag, then at him, her lips parting as if to speak. But no words came, only silence. The sound of engines shook the ground, alien voices echoing through the valley. He turned away, forcing his body to move. Each step felt like betrayal, each step like tearing away a piece of himself. At the edge of the forest, he looked back one last time. She was standing tall despite her wounds, her silver hair blowing in the hot wind. In her hand, the metal tag glinted under the dim light. Their eyes met, and for a moment time stopped again. No words, no promises, only a silent vow sealed between them. Then the carriers descended, blinding light spilling over the valley. He slipped into the shadows of the forest, his figure swallowed by smoke and trees. When the alien soldiers rushed to her side, he was already gone. But in her hand, the small piece of human metal remained, burning with the memory of what had been shared. And though they were torn apart by war, neither of them knew that fate had only begun weaving their story. Their paths would cross again, not as enemies, but as something far more dangerous. Two lives bound by blood and destiny. The human's quiet life. Years passed like shadows moving across a silent wall. The soldier returned to Earth, far from the battlefields of fire and steel. His body carried scars, but his heart carried something deeper, a memory that refused to fade. A memory of silver eyes and the moment when two lives had been tied by blood. He lived in a small town near the mountains. The war had ended for him, at least in the official reports. No medals, no grand speeches, only silence and a discharge paper. He worked simple jobs, repairing broken machines, fixing doors, carrying wood. The people around him saw only a quiet man who wanted no trouble. But inside, he was a storm that never rested. At night, when the world slept, he would sit by the window and stare at the stars. He often wondered which of those distant lights was her world. He wondered if she had survived the war, or if she even remembered him. He told himself it was foolish, that she was an alien, a stranger, a fragment of another universe. And yet, every time he closed his eyes, he could still see her standing in the wind, holding his metal tag. Sometimes he dreamed of her voice. Not the word go she had spoken, but something softer, something human. He would wake with his heart racing, his hand reaching for someone who was never there. Loneliness became his closest companion. But even in the darkest nights, a quiet hope burned in him. A hope that one day, somehow, she would return. The townspeople never knew his story. They only whispered that he was strange, a soldier who avoided crowds and kept to himself. Children asked him about the war, but he only smiled and said nothing. How could he explain to them that the most important battle he fought was not with guns, but with his own blood, given to save a life that should have been his enemy? One evening, as rain tapped gently on the roof, he sat at his table, a half-empty glass beside him. The sound of thunder reminded him of explosions, the flashes of lightning of energy weapons. And he felt again the touch of her hand on his, warm and trembling. He pressed his fingers against his arm, tracing the faint scar where he had cut himself. It was the only proof that it had really happened, the only reminder that it had not been just a dream. But life moved on. The seasons changed, the town aged, new children were born, old men died. Yet he remained the same, a silent figure walking among them, carrying a secret he could never share. The world saw him as just another broken soldier. But in truth, he was waiting, always waiting, waiting for something he could not name, waiting for someone he thought he might never see again. And somewhere beyond the stars, in a place he could not reach, a silver-eyed woman remembered him too, her hand still holding the small piece of metal, her heart still bound by blood, not her own. The bond was not broken, only sleeping, and though he did not know it, the silence of his quiet life was only the calm before the storm. The return. The night was quiet, too quiet for his restless mind. The soldier sat alone outside his small wooden house, watching the stars through the thin clouds. He often stared at them, but tonight felt different. The air was heavier, the silence sharper, as if the world was waiting for something. Then he heard it, a low hum, deep and unnatural, not from any machine he knew. He stood quickly, his heart racing, his hand reaching instinctively for the old rifle he kept near. The sound grew louder, the ground trembling beneath his feet. And then, above the dark trees, a light appeared, brighter than the moon. A ship descended slowly, silent except for the low vibration in the air. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, glowing faintly against the night sky. The townspeople were asleep, unaware. But he knew. He felt it in his bones. This was no human craft. The ship landed in the clearing near his home, bending the grass under its weight. A ramp opened with a hiss, light spilling out like water. He raised his rifle, fear and wonder fighting inside him. Then a figure stepped out, slender, graceful, moving with a strength that felt both human and alien. It was her, the silver-eyed girl he had saved so many years ago. But she was no longer the fragile figure he remembered. She stood tall, her hair longer, her eyes brighter, her presence commanding like that of a queen. Time had changed her, but the bond he felt in his chest told him it was truly her. He lowered the rifle slowly, his breath caught in his throat. Her eyes met his, and for a moment the years melted away. No words, no explanations, only recognition. It was the same look she had given him on the battlefield when he saved her life. Only now it carried something more, something heavier. She stepped closer, her movements calm but urgent. He noticed then what she carried. Her hand rested gently on her stomach, her form unmistakable. She was with child. The truth struck him like a storm. And when she finally spoke, her voice clear and steady in his language, his world broke apart. "This child," she whispered, her hand pressing against her stomach, "is yours." The soldier's rifle slipped from his hand, falling soundlessly to the ground. His knees felt weak, his heart hammering against his chest. He could not speak, could not even breathe. Her words repeated in his mind like thunder. His child, her child, their child. He remembered the battlefield, the cut on his arm, the blood he had given. He had thought it was only a desperate act to save her life. But it had done more, far more than he could have imagined. It had changed her, mixed their essences, created something new, a bond that had gone beyond survival, beyond war, beyond worlds. She moved closer, standing just a breath away. Her silver eyes glowed softly in the dark. "I searched for you," she said, her voice trembling with both strength and fear. "I carried your blood within me, and when life began inside me, I knew it was not only mine, it was ours." The soldier's hands shook as he reached out, almost afraid to touch her. Yet when his fingers brushed hers, the world felt real again. The years of waiting, the endless nights of loneliness, all of it led to this moment. She had returned, not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as something greater. She had returned carrying a future neither of them had ever expected. And though fear clawed at his heart, though his mind screamed in disbelief, deep within his soul, he knew this was the truth. The act of blood that once saved her life had now created another. And their story, long thought finished, had only just begun. The truth revealed. The soldier stood frozen, his mind caught between disbelief and wonder. The alien woman's words still echoed in his ears, each syllable cutting through the silence of the night. His child, her child, a bond born not of choice, but of blood. And yet, as impossible as it sounded, he knew it was true. Her silver eyes watched him carefully, searching his face for anger, fear, or rejection. But all she saw was shock. He tried to speak, but his voice failed, his throat dry like dust. Finally, he managed only one word, trembling as it left his lips. "Ow!" She stepped closer, her hand still resting protectively on her stomach. "When you gave me your blood," she began, her voice steady but heavy with emotion, "it did more than heal me." She lifted her other hand, showing faint scars on her wrist that glowed softly under the moonlight. "Your essence mixed with mine, your strength became part of me." He listened, struggling to understand, but every word pulled him deeper into the truth. "My people call it corruption," she continued, her voice quiet, almost ashamed. "They say I am no longer pure, no longer fully one of them." She paused, her gaze dropping to the ground. "They fear what I carry now, for the child inside me is proof that human and alien are no longer separate." The soldier felt his chest tighten, anger flickering in his heart. "They would harm you?" he asked, his voice sharper than before. She nodded slowly, her hair falling across her face. "They will call him an abomination, a danger to the balance of our kind." Her hand pressed harder against her stomach, her lips trembling. "But I do not see danger. I see life, hope, and a bridge between two worlds." For the first time since the war, the soldier felt something awaken inside him. Not just the loneliness or the pain of memory, but purpose. The child was not only hers, it was his as well. And though the thought terrified him, it also filled him with fire. This was not just fate, it was responsibility. He stepped forward, closing the space between them. His hand hovered uncertainly before finally resting over hers. Her warmth met his, and for a moment the fear vanished. He felt the faint pulse of life beneath her touch. A heartbeat that was both alien and human, fragile yet powerful. His eyes lifted to hers, steady now. "They will not take this from you," he said firmly. "Not from us." The alien woman's eyes widened, shimmering with unshed tears. For years she had carried the weight alone, hunted by her people, unsure if he would even accept her. But now, in that single moment, she knew he would not abandon her. Not then, not now, not ever. The night around them seemed to grow darker, the stars fading behind thick clouds, as if the universe itself listened to their vow. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble echoed, a reminder that danger was never far. But within the clearing, within the circle of their joined hands, there was only truth. The truth that one act of blood had created something greater than war, something neither species could erase. The soldier knew the path ahead would be dangerous, perhaps impossible. But when he looked at her, and when he felt the small heartbeat under his hand, he knew he would face it all, not as a broken man, not as a lost soldier, but as a father. The conflict. The night should have been silent after the truth was spoken. But silence never lasts long when fate is already hunting. The soldier stood with the alien woman, his hand still resting over hers. Then he felt a vibration in the ground, faint but growing. Engines, heavy and cold, moving closer with every second. Her eyes widened, silver light trembling with fear. "They have come," she whispered, her voice breaking. He did not need her words. The sound was enough. He had heard engines like these before, not human, not friendly. Alien hunters, sent to capture what her people called forbidden. The soldier's instincts returned, the instincts of war he thought he had buried. He grabbed his old rifle, checking the chamber with hands that no longer shook. The quiet man of the village was gone. The soldier was back, ready to fight. The clearing filled with shadows as ships hovered above the trees. Beams of light swept across the ground, searching. Voices echoed in a language he could not fully understand. But he knew the tone. It was the sound of orders, commands, and death. The alien woman touched his arm, her face torn between fear and guilt. "They want me," she said, her voice trembling. "They will take the child, erase the bloodline, erase everything." Her words cut deeper than any blade. The soldier clenched his teeth, shaking his head. "They'll have to go through me first," he growled. The first squad landed, armored figures moving with machine-like precision. Their weapons glowed, humming with deadly power. The soldier aimed, his rifle shaking only for a moment before his finger pulled the trigger. The first shot cracked through the night, echoing across the clearing. One hunter fell, the others scattered, firing beams of burning light. Explosions tore through the ground, fire licking the trees. The soldier pushed her behind cover, his body shielding hers. The fight was uneven, one man against an army. But he was no ordinary man, not anymore. Blood had tied him to something greater, and he felt it burning inside him. The alien woman closed her eyes, whispering words in her tongue. Her hands glowed faintly, a strange energy sparking between her fingers. When she opened her eyes again, her silver gaze was fierce. "You gave me your blood," she said, her voice steady now. "Now it gives me strength." She lifted her hands, sending a wave of energy crashing into the hunters. The ground shook, trees bent, and alien soldiers were thrown back into the dark. The soldiers stared, stunned, but there was no time to question. He fired again, covering her as they fought side by side. Human steel and alien power, bound together in a battle neither could have survived alone. But the hunters did not retreat. More ships descended, lights burning the sky. The clearing became a storm of fire and sound. For every one they struck down, more came. The soldier knew this was not a battle he could win by force. "Not tonight, not here." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the shadows of the forest. "We have to move," he shouted, his voice raw. She resisted for a moment, looking at the fallen hunters, her people, her past. But then she nodded, gripping his hand tightly. Together they ran, their bodies cutting through smoke and ash. Behind them, the clearing burned. Voices roared. Ships followed, the night lit with war once again. But in the darkness of the forest, two figures moved as one. A soldier and an alien, a man and a woman, carrying not only themselves, but the fragile heartbeat of a future the universe was not ready to accept. And though the hunters chased, though the sky trembled with fire, the bond of blood carried them forward. For the first time, they were not running from fate. They were running toward it together, the new beginning. The forest swallowed them, its shadows hiding their escape. The soldier's breath was heavy, his chest burning with every step, but his grip on her hand never loosened. Behind them, the glow of alien ships lit the night like a false sunrise. The hunters were relentless, their voices echoing through the trees. Yet still, they ran, bound by fear, by courage, and by something greater than both. Finally, when the noise of pursuit grew faint, they stopped near the edge of a cliff. The valley below stretched wide, filled with rivers that shone under the pale light of the moons. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the sound of the wind and their ragged breaths. The soldier lowered his rifle, his hands trembling. He looked at her, at the way she held her stomach, protecting the child as if nothing else mattered. And he knew, no matter the cost, he would protect them both. She turned to him, her silver eyes shimmering with exhaustion and fire. "We cannot run forever," she whispered, her voice calm but heavy. "They will always come. They will never stop." Her words were truth, sharp and cruel. But the soldier shook his head, his voice steady even through the storm inside him. "Then let them come," he said. "As long as I breathe, they will not take you. They will not take the child." Tears welled in her eyes, not of weakness but of relief. For years she had carried the burden alone, hunted by her own kind. Now, for the first time, she was not alone. The soldier was no longer just a man who had saved her life. He was the father of her child, the shield against a universe that wanted to erase them. She reached into her robes and pulled out the small piece of metal he had once given her. His soldier's tag, worn and scarred, yet still shining faintly. She pressed it into his hand, closing his fingers around it. "You gave this to me when we parted," she said softly. "Now I return it, not as memory, but as promise." The soldier stared at the tag, the same piece of metal that had bound them years ago, but now it carried a different weight. It was no longer just a reminder of the past. It was a symbol of the future. Above them, the sky roared once more. The hunters had not given up, ships circling like vultures. The war was not finished, and danger was not gone. But the soldier did not feel fear. He felt something stronger, hope. He stepped closer to her, his hand resting firmly over hers as she held her stomach. Together, they looked out over the valley, the rivers shining like veins of silver. In that moment, the world seemed wider than war, larger than fear. It was no longer about two broken lives. It was about the one life growing between them. A child who was not only human, not only alien, but something new. The soldier whispered softly, his voice barely carried by the wind. "This is not the end," he said. "This is the beginning." And as the night closed around them, as the stars burned above, the soldier and the alien woman stood together, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as family. A new story had begun, one written in blood, in sacrifice, and in love. A story that would echo across two worlds, bound forever by the heartbeat of a child.